Those are the two solutions to get you out of this mental mindset, not being able to help people because you can't take care of your own self financially. So I was watching a podcast the other day, one of my most favorite podcasts called Know Thyself Podcast. And he had a guest on there, and she said something so profound. She's been in the spiritual space, she's a spiritual leader, but she was talking about leadership a lot. And that's what her and her husband focus on, is leadership from a more conscious and aware space, as opposed to leadership that we've had for centuries that are not rooted in consciousness, in a higher consciousness specifically. And she said what she's really working on is helping entrepreneurs in the spiritual space step into a more empowered embodiment of prosperity and abundance and wealth. Because the reason for this, and this is what I thought was very profound, was she said, because mostly the people that don't want the money or don't care about the money are the people that should have the money. Because usually they're more conscious, they're more aware, they're more focused on love, connection, creation, innovation, as opposed to the old model that we've had for a really long time. And so those are the people that should have the money. And it made me start thinking. I've worked on my own belief system around particularly money, wealth, prosperity a lot in the last couple of years, really, and looked at my own stuff around money and wealth and abundance and prosperity and what that really means and what success means, especially as a spiritual leader and as a spiritual teacher and as a spiritual coach. Her saying that, I was like, yes, she's right. People who are more conscious and aware and operate from that space in their lives and embodiment, because there's a difference between knowing spiritual and self-help principles and actually embodying them and integrating them. I was like, yes, those are the people that need to have the money, because with money brings influence and power. And so the people in influence and power should be the leaders that know how to lead from a deeply conscious space, that are leading us toward frameworks and structures and communities and cultures that are rooted in love, in connection, in wisdom, in freedom, and self-sovereignty. And being able to do that requires, like I said, those people that are making those decisions and that are leading our culture and leading our people should be the ones that have the money. And so, as I said, it got me thinking about the spiritual space, which I have been in for the last 9 years personally, but have been coaching and teaching and mentoring in the space for the last 6. And there for sure are common themes I see over and over and over again, especially around money in the spiritual communities. And I have seen this in my own journey. Like I said, I've dug and dug deep and have been so blown away really at these deep subconscious beliefs that I had around money and around wealth and prosperity and abundance without even realizing them. I mean, they're called unconscious beliefs for a reason. And it's really not until you make the conscious choice to go, okay, let me peel back the layers and see what's happening deep internally within me. And it didn't just come from my parents. It doesn't just come from your parents, although that's a huge influence, but it comes from culture as a whole and how we culturally and collectively look at money, look at wealth, look at prosperity, look at abundance. And this happens in the spiritual community as well. There's a cultural collective belief that can happen in the spiritual community. And what I hope to share with you today is how we can really begin to change that and transform that. So like I said, those of you out there right now that are so excited, passionate, empowered with the idea of creating something better in our world and helping people evolve and helping people heal, if that is you, but you find yourself in this loop of constantly being broke, guess what? You're not going to be able to help those people if you can't barely survive. You're not going to be able to make changes if you yourself can't barely survive. So you, the people out there that are watching this, that are the change makers, that are the ones that are passionate about leading from a more balanced, centered, peaceful place, then this video is for you. You need to listen to this because we need you. We need you in the future. We need you to be rooted in your own abundance and prosperity so that you can really begin to start make some really massive changes, not just in yourself, obviously, but for the ones that you love, and then expand out of that for our entire world, for the collective, for all of us, for our culture, to really start to create something new around money as opposed to the very old framework of money. And so in this video today, like I said, I wanted to break down for you why I believe spiritual people are broke, what is sort of driving that, and solutions. Obviously, I don't want to just tell you the problem, I want to give you solutions to the problem. And like I said, if this resonates with you, if you find yourself being someone that's really, really passionate about making big changes in the world, but you find yourself not even be able to financially afford your own life, then you're really going to want to listen in to this one as I go through exactly what you need to start doing so you can change that cycle. And then as we start with individuals, we move to the collective and we really start reframing the way that not just our culture looks at money, but also, like I said, the spiritual communities, because the spiritual community can't keep itself in an echo chamber and just keep itself segregated. Like, that's not the point. The point is that we have to move out into the world and bring this new energy, bring these new ideas, bring these new solutions out to the whole. That's the only way that everything is going to shift and to change. I am going to explain this by using our framework that we use really for anything, anything that we're helping our clients work through, anything we're helping our students understand. It's always within the framework of the quadrant theory. If you've watched this video for the first time, you don't know what the quadrant theory is. I'm going to break it down really, really simply for you because I have a whole ton of videos that you can go back on our channel and watch that'll give you a deeper dive into what the quadrant theory is. But really, at its most fundamental basics, the quadrant theory is breaking your brain up into 4 different aspects, 4 different quadrants. And each quadrant of your brain is actually responsible for not only different aspects of yourself, but different aspects of your life. And not just individually, but collectively. You can see these 4 quadrants being represented in really everything in our world, from science to astrology to biochemistry to psychology, like every aspect really of our world, to our myths and our traditions and storytelling, and really everything that you interact with can be broken down into these 4 quadrants. So it's not just the 4 quadrants of a single brain, it's the 4 quadrants of our, what I call our collective brain. And so when you're activated in each of one of these individual quadrants, you're going to create different biochemistry, which means you're going to feel differently, you're going to think differently, you're going to act differently, all because each of these quadrants, like I said, they're all responsible for different aspects of the self, different aspects of your life, different aspects of the collective. Quadrant 1 is really the aspect of you that is the ego. So for those of you that are in the spiritual space, you'll be very familiar with the solar plexus chakra. So this is the solar plexus chakra. It's the part of you that's the doer, it's the masculine, it's the forward movement, it's the leader, it's the courage, it's the ability to do, which obviously we need to have in our life and we need to have in our collective. Quadrant 2 down here is the inner child. So it's the part of you that has memory. It's the part of you that gives meaning to certain things. It's the part of you that can connect and empathize with another. It's the part of you that is your intuition. So when you were really young, like you would just know certain things could happen. That's all down here in quadrant 2. And then quadrant 3 is also the inner child. It's the limbic system of your brain, but it's the inner child that doesn't have memories. So number 2 stores memories. Quadrant 3 doesn't store any memories. Quadrant 3 is in the present all of the time. So you can think of the really playful child, like the adventurous. It's the fire element. So think of fiery, like a young child out dancing, playing with their friends. Like, they don't care what people think of them. They don't have all this stuff over here, the unconscious thoughts and beliefs. They're just constantly in the present. And then up here in quadrant 4 is the sage part of you, the wise part of you. You could say your higher self, the part of you that knows more, that is an expanded consciousness, that is connected to everyone and everything, that sees more of the perspective of the universe, of God, of source, of the divine, whatever word you want to give it. And so those make up the 4 quadrants. And you will see on a spiritual journey how you move through each of these quadrants at different stages and seasons in your life. And so why spiritual people are broke is because this is what happens. For a majority of the time, most people, if they haven't done the inner work, they operate from a quadrant 2, which then drives their quadrant 1, which means they live their life from a perspective that life happens to me. And so really this can lead to victimization, victim mentality, like people need to do things for me. There's a lot of limiting beliefs that happen in quadrant 2. And that's also where the healing happens. And so down here in quadrant 2 is also where all the beliefs around money and prosperity and abundance live as well, down here in quadrant 2. And so all of these beliefs, subconscious beliefs, drive their actions in quadrant 1. Quadrant 1 is the ego aspect of you. It's the personality. It's the mask you wear in the world that you want people to see. It may not be who you really are, but it's who you want people to observe you as. And so if they haven't done the inner work down here in 2, their actions are being led by subconscious beliefs that a lot of times aren't very empowering. And so as a collective, we have unconscious beliefs as a collective. So on the micro level, we have them as individuals. The macro, we have it as a collective. And so over here is what drives most people's lives, and they're stuck in this loop of the left side of the brain because our culture values the left side of the brain activities and beliefs. And so we're stuck over here all of the time. And that is where we experience burnout, stress, overwhelm, sadness, grief, like all of these really low vibration emotions, everything that just keeps us stuck in the struggle of unconsciousness. And we can't get out. We think the only way we can get out is to do more, and then doing more. It's just this really disempowering cycle that we're stuck. So what happens when you have a spiritual awakening is you start activating quadrants 3 and quadrants 4 of your brain. And so you can understand that when you start having the volume turned up on these 2 quadrants and not as much on these 2 quadrants, this feels like freedom over here. This is the right side of the brain. This feels like fun and freedom, and I'm broken out of the matrix, and I can live the way I want to live, and I can create what I want to create, and I'm connected to source, and my heart is open. Like all these really wonderful things that can come from the right side of the brain. But what happens, and this is sort of the first stumbling block, is number 1, a lot of times they bypass, so they try to go from like 1 to 4 without doing the deep inner work in quadrant 2. And why that's important is because that's your subconscious belief system. And if you hold as an individual unconscious beliefs about money, then even though you're feeling all these really good things, you're still going to hold a lot of unconscious stuff around money, which is going to direct your experience in quadrant 1. Quadrant 1 is how we experience the world. And so it's these subconscious beliefs are still going to drive your experience. Even though you're over here having a really good time, you still have some work to do down here in your belief system around money. So things like money is bad, or money is hard to come by, or all people who have money are bad. That was a huge one for me that I really, really had to look at, was this concept and idea that every single person that has money is a bad person. And the more that I learned, which is an antidote to some subconscious beliefs, the more I understood and realized that actually a lot of millionaires and billionaires, number 1, are self-made, which means they worked their way to that. And number 2, are actually really good people. But instead, our culture as a collective, and then perhaps your parents, taught you and gave this version of people who have money as really bad people. And so that's what we choose to look at, and that's what we choose to believe. And because we choose to believe that, that's what shows up in our environment. So you first really, really have to start digging deep on the belief systems that you have around finance. And once you see those, then you have to start going, what do I want to believe about money? Like, what is possible in a world that isn't driven by unconscious beliefs, so that it appears that money is the root of all evil, but it's actually people that are that root. And actually, I would not say people, I would say unconsciousness actually is the root of all evil. And so what does a world look like where we don't have these really unconscious limiting beliefs around what money has to look like, or what prosperity? Can we envision a world where, like I said, people like you who are conscious and loving and aware and want to make the world a better place, that you actually have abundance and prosperity, so that we all have the opportunity to create that. And then the money are in the hands of people who are more conscious and want to lead from a more conscious place. So first step, like I said, is really starting with, what are my own internal beliefs around money? What have I been told? What I've been taught? And then start doing research into, what I did was really start learning about money. I started learning about the economic system. I started learning a lot of things, because knowledge a lot of times will replace limiting beliefs. The more you expand your consciousness and awareness, it's going to get rid of these limiting beliefs that you've never even questioned your whole life. So first step is beliefs. What does it look like now? What are the beliefs I have now? What can it look like if I didn't have those beliefs, if I had more empowering beliefs? And that's really the first step, is beliefs. You have to look at your beliefs around money. Even if you have an awakening and you're operating over here more, you still have to do this deep, deep inner, a lot of people call it shadow work, unconsciousness work. It doesn't really matter what name you give it, but it's really about digging deep into your own psyche. And that's the first step, is belief. The other problem with why spiritual people are broke is because a lot of times when they have a spiritual awakening, what happens? They start operating over here, the right side of their brain, quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. And they start going, oh my gosh, I don't want anything to do with this world anymore, because this world obviously has caused my trauma. They're all unhappy. It's just a horrible place to live. I don't want to operate from within any of those 3D things anymore. I've said this myself, and I hear it from a lot of people, like, I don't want to have to deal with the 3D anymore. I'm just going to ascend out of the body, and I'm not going to have anything to do with the 3D because it's all bad. And so what happens is, guess what? If you're operating over here and you're negating quadrant 1 and quadrant 2, you are not going to have any force, any life force energy, any drive, any energy going to creation of quadrant 1 and 2, because guess what? You're still in a body. You are still in an ego, because that's your identity. You still have a part of your brain that is the inner child, regardless if you want to believe in inner child work or not. You have a part of your brain that's dedicated to your inner child, literally, biologically in your brain. And you have an ego that operates in a 3-dimensional world. And so you can try to avoid or ignore that, but you're living right now. You're not in the 5D. You're not in the spiritual. You're in a body, in a human consciousness at the same time as being a soul. And so instead of just disregarding all of this, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, what we really need to do is create balance, because quadrant 1 is not a bad thing and quadrant 2 is not a bad thing. In fact, they're very necessary and important to our overall evolution as a species. The problem has been we haven't let quadrant 3 and 4 drive our feelings and beliefs and our actions in the 3-dimensional world. And because of that, we've created, some things that are destructive. And so what we need to learn to do is actually creating balance between all 4 of these quadrants, which it's a normal part of the spiritual path and the spiritual evolution to want to just avoid all of these things, because this seems like it feels so good. But it's just because you haven't learned to balance your quadrant 1 and 2. It's just because you're in quadrant 1 overdrive, or you're in quadrant 2 overdrive, and your victim lens is projecting out into the world all of the time. And so of course that's what you're creating. And so the solution isn't to get rid of this. The solution is to bring balance into this. And finances and money really live in quadrant 1 of the brain. So when you want to create wealth, prosperity, abundance, you're going to have to be activated actually in your quadrant 1. But you want the ideas and the actions to be led by wisdom. You want the ideas and actions to be led by love, which exists over here. And so that's why you cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater and just pretend like money isn't an important thing. It is. It's what drives our culture. And in order to think of solutions, how to improve that culture, we have to be able to accept it and let, like I said, everything be led from a higher state of consciousness, from love, from connection, from wisdom, from peace, from balance, from alignment, all of these really important things that we all want, right? There's not one person on this earth right now that would not agree that they want more peace and balance and love and creation and equality and joy and all these really amazing things for every single person on this planet. And so what we have to do is activate our quadrant 3 and 4, and that's what happens in a spiritual awakening. And then we have to use those values, like I said, to push our beliefs and behaviors and actions. So you have to accept quadrant 1 and quadrant 2 as a part of the equation. You just can't let them be driven by this. You have to let them be driven by this. And so instead of going, I'm not going to have anything to do with quadrant 1 finances, I don't want to think about this. And trust me, in our own business, I've had to come up against this over and over and over again, because there are parts of me. I'm a natural born quadrant 4. And so I can very easily go out into the ethers and be lost in the astral world and the mental space of how the universe works and why it works. I very easily can do that, but I also realize that if I'm going to bring that into a 3-dimensional space, I have to be able to operate in balance from my quadrant 1 and my quadrant 2, and I have to work on all these beliefs, like I said, that money is bad, or money is the root of all evil, or money shouldn't belong in a system, or all of these things that aren't helping us create something better. Because guess what? Money is a neutral thing. It's completely neutral. It's the people that are using it and how they're using it and why they're using it that creates the narrative that money is bad. Because I think we could all agree money does provide us with, number one, our basic needs. And if you're broke, you're not making an impact on this world. And that's why what she said struck me so much, because I was like, oh my gosh, it's true. There are so many people I know, coaches and mentors and guides and all these really amazing people, that they're stuck over here going, money is a bad thing, but yet struggling to operate in a 3-dimensional space that we use money. And so they've either said, I don't want anything to do with money, which gives them no influence in this 3-dimensional world, or they think that they can't have it because money is bad, because they haven't dealt with their beliefs. And instead learn to love the ability that money can give you to create change in this world. And it really can. And if we want to create something better, as I said, if you're in the space to helping people, you want to create something better. And right now in our structures and in our frameworks, that requires money, wealth to do that. And so this is why it's so important that, number one, you work on your belief systems. So if you're interested in working on these two things, which, like I said, the two solutions, belief and balance, those are the two solutions to get you out of this mental mindset of wanting to change, creating change, but not being able to help people because you can't take care of your own self financially. Beliefs and balance. Those are the two answers to this problem. If you're interested in changing both of those things, number one, you have to start with beliefs. And belief starts in quadrant 2. And my husband and I have created a step-by-step process to help you work through these triggers, because your triggers tell you exactly what your beliefs are. And so many people want to avoid triggers. They want to avoid shadow work. Again, especially if they've had an awakening and they're stuck over here in quadrant 3 and 4, they don't want anything to do with 2. And in fact, 2 is a pathway to their true freedom and integration. Because if you're just operating in quadrant 3 and 4 all the time, you're not integrating, you're not embodying, because integration and embodiment happens in 2 and 1. And so if you want to work on those money beliefs, we have you, like I said, go through a step-by-step process. We use a framework called the boardroom to help you really understand, okay, what are these boardroom members at the table of my brain? What are the beliefs that are driving my actions, driving my thoughts, driving my feelings, and literally keeping out of my awareness possibility and potential, because my belief is going to cause me to focus on one certain thing so that that belief can be reaffirmed. So if we don't start changing these at a deep, unconscious, subconscious level, those are going to continue to drive our experiences. And it's not fun doing this work. It's not the rainbows and unicorns over here. It's the deep work where you have to put a mirror up and go, oh my gosh, I had no idea that I believe this about myself or about the world or about money or whatever else it is. But that's your pathway to true freedom, is going, okay, if I can recognize them, then I can get rid of them, or I can reorganize them, we'll say, so that they are empowering. And like I said, my husband and I have a step-by-step process for you to do that. We have a self-paced online course called Healing from Within, and it focuses on quadrant 2. And you don't just have to apply it to money, you can apply it to relationships. can apply it to any area of your life, really, where you can see that you're struggling. You're struggling because you have belief systems and belief frameworks set up around that category, around whatever area of your life it is. And so that'll really help you get to the root cause. Instead of trying to bypass and just think positively, it's going to help you get to the root of your beliefs. It's, like I said, self-paced, online. You do it at your own pace. It's only 4 modules. It is small but mighty. It is, I believe, one of our most powerful courses that we have created to really help people get to the root of their problems and their issues in their life. And then balance. So in balance, what we use, like I said, is this quadrant theory framework. It really dives in deep into what each of these quadrants are, but more importantly, at the end of this, it helps you to create your own map. Now, why would having your own map be important? Because if you are imbalanced in your life, like I said, if you are stuck over here in quadrant 3 and quadrant 4, number 1, you're in a loop. So it's like Groundhog Day. So you may know what you need to do, but you're not actually doing it. So it's like, oh, I have all this spiritual knowledge now, but my life isn't changing. And that's because there is a lot of imbalance happening. And so the map helps you, number 1, to be aware of where am I stuck in each quadrant and how to get out of it. And then how to create overall balance every single day, so that every day I have a framework and I have a structure for how to apply this into my life. Not just to know, you can watch all the podcasts, you can watch all the spiritual teachers, you can gain all the knowledge that you want, which is important, by the way. That is a very important step in the process. But you then have to integrate it and embody it, which means you're going to have to go out into the world and just let it be driven by the right side of your brain instead of the left side of your brain. So like I said, we go through a very deep and intensive process, but oh my gosh, have I just not realized over and over and over again, this is a framework for life. Like, this is your instruction manual for this 3-dimensional space, so that you're not struggling. You're not in this constant spiritual high and low roller coaster where you're like, oh yeah, I'm up here and forward, I'm great. And then you drop way down, way over in this corner and 2, and you're like, what the hell? Why am I struggling so much? This really helps take the spiritual path and put it in a step-by-step process so that you can actually follow it. You can live a true spiritually led life of freedom, of peace, of joy, of creation, all of these beautiful things that happen in all the quadrants. You just have to learn to balance them. We do that through 2 ways. We have a quadrant theory intro class, so it's much shorter. It's only 6 modules. You do it on your own. And then we have what we call our immersive, and that's 12 modules, but really it's lifetime access. So you're going to be in that course for as long as you want or need to be in it. We do weekly calls. There's all sorts of things that come along with that, and that is an application only process because it's such a deep and immersive process, which means we're going to be in each other's lives for potentially the next year or so. So if you are interested in either one of those things, which, like I said, is really working on belief and balance, because you want to be able to thrive, not just survive, but thrive as a spiritual teacher, as a spiritual leader. You want to create a better world. If you want to do that, you can't do that if you're broke. You just can't. You really have to start looking at money as something that's empowering, something that gives you the tool to create change and to really help people, which you can't do, like I said, if you're broke. So if you're interested in either one of those, I'm going to put a link in the description for the Healing from Within class, as well as the Quadrant Theory class, and then a link to set up a call so that we can dive into the immersive if that's what's really calling to you. If you're at a place that you're like, okay, I've been on the spiritual journey for a while, I'm tired of the highs and lows, I want to live more in my purpose, I want to live more in embodiment and fully integrated self, that's what the immersive can do for you. So like I said, I'll put all those links down below. And as I always say, like, subscribe, click the red bell, do all of those things you know to do when you watch a YouTube channel. I don't need to tell you that. But more importantly, share this video. Share it with somebody that you know could help, that maybe be struggling financially, but is really centered in their desire to want to create more love in the world, because ultimately that's what we need more of, is love and connection and freedom. If you think that this can help them because they're struggling financially, please send this video to them. I hope this helped you. Let me know in the comments if you see yourself in this. Let me know if you are somebody that wants to lead but finds yourself really struggling with the financial aspect of that. and how that plays out for you in your life. I hope, like I said, that this gave you some value. I hope that you enjoyed this, and I will see you on the next episode.